The school had been locked for almost 2 hours when the first voice came through the intercom. By then, the building should have been completely empty. The last teachers had left before sunset, the cleaning crew had signed out, and the night security guard had already finished his first round through the halls. It was an ordinary weekday in late autumn, and nothing about the evening suggested anything unusual. The classrooms were dark, the office doors closed, and the parking lot outside reflected only the pale security lights mounted near the entrance. Inside, the building had settled into that particular kind of silence school seemed to hold after everyone had gone home. Then, at 9:43 p.m., the intercom clicked on above the main hallway, and a calm voice spoke a student's full name, followed by the words, "Please report to room 214. At first, the guard assumed the system had malfunctioned. Old public address systems can behave strangely when wiring ages, especially in large buildings with decades of renovations layered behind the walls. He radioed the front office, then remembered no one would answer because he was the only person still on site. The voice itself had not sounded electronic in a broken way. It had sounded controlled, clear, and human, as if someone had pressed the office broadcast button and spoken normally into the microphone. The part that disturbed him most, however, was not the announcement tone. It was the name. The student named over the speaker had graduated 3 years earlier. The guard remembered him specifically because he had once handled a small fight in the cafeteria involving the same student. There was no reason that name should have been anywhere near an active nightly broadcast routine. He went first to the main office, expecting to find some forgotten handset left active or a wiring relay stuck in transmit mode. The office door was locked from the inside as usual, but his master key opened it without issue. Everything looked untouched. The staff desks were dark, the phones silent, and the main PA microphone sat exactly where it belonged beside the secretary's station. He checked the control panel and found the system powered but idle. No active line, no broadcast channel open, no indicator that an announcement had just been made. If someone had spoken over the intercom from that desk, the panel should have shown a live event in the recent activity trace. It showed nothing. Yet the guard had heard the voice clearly, and the hall speakers had carried it through the building with perfect volume. He had just stepped back into the corridor when the intercom activated again. This time, the voice named a different student and instructed them to report to the music room. The phrasing was formal, almost old-fashioned, the kind of language staff used in schools decades earlier rather than today's shorter, more casual tone. The voice did not sound angry, rushed, or distorted. That calmness made the message feel more unnatural, not less. The guard froze in the middle of the hallway, flashlight pointed uselessly at the floor, listening as the announcement ended in a soft click. Again, the building returned to silence immediately afterward. No footsteps, no door movement, no sign that anyone had reacted, because according to every rational expectation, there was no one left inside to react at all. He began checking rooms one by one, starting with room 214. The classroom was empty. Chairs were stacked neatly, homework worksheets sat half erased on the board, and a projector screen remained lowered from the last lesson of the day. Nothing in the room suggested recent presence. The windows were locked, and the only sound came from the faint hum of air moving through the heating system. He checked the music room next. It too was empty, though several instruments had been left in open storage as if ready for the next class. What unsettled him was not that the rooms were vacant, it was that the announcements had pointed to real rooms connected to real former students, as though the voice behind the system knew the school intimately rather than broadcasting random names into the dark. The guard called the school's assistant principal at home, waking him and trying to explain the situation without sounding irrational. The administrator assumed it was a prank by someone who had gained access to the PA controls remotely or remained hidden in the building after hours. He drove back to campus while the guard stayed on the line, describing what he saw and heard. During that 20-minute wait, the intercom activated 3 more times. Each announcement named a student no longer enrolled at the school and assigned them to a specific room. One name belonged to a former debate club student, one had transferred away years earlier, another had been listed in the archived attendance records as absent on the date tied to an older disciplinary file. The pattern was becoming harder to dismiss as random interference. When the assistant principal arrived, the two men reviewed the student names together in the office. At first, the connection seemed impossible to establish. Then they noticed that every name mentioned that night belonged to students connected to the same graduating class from 8 years earlier. That discovery changed the atmosphere immediately. The administrator remembered that year because it coincided with a staffing scandal the school had tried to handle quietly. A beloved teacher disappeared mid-semester after allegations involving altered records and private after-hours tutoring sessions in locked classrooms. Officially, the teacher resigned and left the district. Unofficially, rumors had spread for years that something far stranger happened inside the building before he was gone. Security footage from the current night showed no one moving through the corridors before or after the announcements. The cameras were old but functional, covering the main hallways, office entrances, stairwells, and cafeteria access points. In every visible section of the building, the school remained empty. Yet each time the intercom activated, the camera closest to the announced room glitched slightly. Nothing dramatic, just a brief brightening of the image as if the exposure had shifted for less than a second. When the feed stabilized, the corridor looked unchanged. No person appeared, no door opened. The footage proved only one thing clearly. The voice was being broadcast into empty space, and whatever triggered it was not moving through the monitored parts of the building like an ordinary intruder would. The assistant principal pulled old archived records from a locked file cabinet in the office. Some of the documents concerned disciplinary meetings, class attendance, and room assignments tied to the vanished teacher. What emerged from the files was not a complete explanation, but a pattern. The named students had all spent time in a program overseen by that same teacher after hours in room 214 and the music room. The records were incomplete, and several pages appeared to have been removed deliberately years earlier. But one typed note from a former counselor referenced repeated late announcements calling those students back into the building for unscheduled sessions. The note was unsigned and marked unresolved. The administrator stared at that page for a long time before quietly admitting he had never seen that page before. At 10:31 p.m., the intercom came alive again. This time, the voice had no name at all. The voice simply said, "Begin attendance." The tone was the same, calm, measured, and entirely sure of itself. Then something happened that neither man forgot. In 3 separate classrooms, motion sensors tied to the lighting system activated one after another, illuminating rooms that were dark moments earlier. Room 214 came on first, then the music room, then the auditorium access corridor. The lights remained on for 11 seconds before shutting off again in sequence. The guard later described the effect as if the building itself had responded to a command that no current staff member had given. The men decided to check the basement maintenance corridor because old PA wiring in the building ran beneath the main classrooms and reconnected through a series of relay cabinets installed decades before. The basement was not part of the regular student environment. It housed pipes, electrical panels, storage, and the older service routes that newer staff rarely used. As they descended the stairs, the intercom crackled overhead, even though the basement had no visible ceiling speakers in that section. Still, the voice was audible. This time, it spoke only one sentence: "You're late." Neither man answered. They continued forward through the service hall until they reached a locked maintenance panel area behind the east wing classrooms. Inside the utility room, they found the first real physical irregularity of the night. A secondary PA relay box had been reopened recently. The screws holding the front plate were loose, and the dust pattern along the hinges had been disturbed.
yet no current maintenance order authorized work in that section, and the head custodian later confirmed no staff had touched it in months. When the assistant principal shone his flashlight inside, he found a nested line of older speaker routing still connected to a dormant classroom map. Several room numbers marked in faded pencil matched the exact rooms named in the announcements. At the bottom of the panel, written directly onto the metal surface in almost invisible old ink, was a date, 8 years ago, the same month the teacher disappeared. That discovery led them to the archive room, where old yearbooks, staff rosters, and boxed administrative files were stored. There, in a mislabeled carton from the same year, they found an unfinished incident packet tied to the vanished teacher. Most of the pages concerned procedural issues and parent complaints, but one handwritten statement from a night janitor described hearing the intercom announce student.
It happened in a hotel that had been standing for nearly 80 years. The kind of place where polished marble floors and soft golden lighting were meant to create a sense of calm luxury. Most nights ended quietly after midnight, when the lobby emptied and the staff shifted into routine. On that particular night, only a receptionist, one security guard, and a maintenance worker remained on duty. Nothing unusual had been reported. The weather outside was calm, the guest count was low, and the elevators had been operating without issues all evening. Yet shortly after 1 a.m., one elevator made an unscheduled stop in the lobby, even though no call had been placed from any floor and no one was waiting to enter. At first, no one thought much of it. But within the next hour, that elevator would be linked to one of the most disturbing incidents the hotel had ever quietly buried. The receptionist noticed the elevator first because the bell sounded in an otherwise silent lobby. The doors opened slowly, revealing an empty cabin lit by soft interior lights. No guests stepped out, no luggage wheels crossed the marble floor. The car simply opened, waited, and closed again. It should have been dismissed as a routine glitch. Older buildings had strange habits, and luxury hotels often hid their technical imperfections beneath polished surfaces. But a few minutes later, the same elevator returned to the lobby again, opened, and remained there longer than usual. This time, the receptionist walked over and looked inside. Everything seemed normal until she noticed one thing. The floor indicator above the control panel showed the car had just come from a level that did not exist on the public guest map of the hotel. The elevator itself was elegant in the outdated way many old hotels are. Mirrored walls, brass trim, soft ceiling lights, and a floor panel polished by decades of use. The receptionist stepped inside and looked more carefully at the row of buttons. The numbered floors matched the public layout, but one tiny light above the panel still glowed faintly where no visible button existed. It was not a floor number she could press, only an indicator she could see reflected near the edge of the panel glass. When she called security and asked whether there had ever been another level in the building, the guard laughed at first and told her she was overthinking a faulty light. But when he came to inspect it himself, he stopped joking almost immediately. He saw it too. Something in the elevator system was indicating a stop between the 12th floor and the roof service level. The security guard checked the digital elevator log from the front desk terminal, expecting to find a minor electronic error. But the event record showed an actual stop request had been processed. The elevator had gone to level 14A at 12:58 a.m., remained there for 16 seconds, and then returned to the lobby. The problem was simple. There was no level 14A in the hotel.